The Galactic Council was a place of power and diplomacy. It was where the most influential species in the galaxy came together to make decisions that affected the entire universe. Humans had always been a part of this, though they were still considered newcomers compared to the ancient civilizations that had been around for thousands of years. Despite their relatively young position, humanity had proven itself to be smart, resourceful, and adaptable. Their presence on the council had been seen as both a blessing and a challenge for the more established species. However, today, everything was different. A message had arrived that stunned the entire council. The humans had officially cut all diplomatic ties. The message was brief, cold, and unyielding. It was clear that the humans, after years of cooperation, had decided they were done playing. By the council's rules, there was no longer any room for debate. It was over. The message was broadcasted to every member of the Galactic Council. Representatives of various species from across the galaxy stared at the holographic image of the human envoy. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell, who stood in front of a simple backdrop. She looked calm but firm. Her eyes were focused and her voice carried the weight of a decision that no one had anticipated. We, the people of Earth, have decided to sever all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. Sarah's voice echoed across the room. We will no longer participate in your agreements or comply with your demands. Seek to be independent and to stand as equals, not as subordinates. The age of manipulation is over. The council room fell silent. The alien representatives exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't a simple act of protest or a temporary dispute. This was a statement of declaration. They couldn't believe it. They had expected this kind of behavior from the smaller, less developed species, but not from the humans. For centuries, humans had been seen as an underdog, a species that struggled to find its place in the galaxy.
Nice.
They had started off slow, with their limited technology and understanding of the universe, but in the last few decades, humanity had begun to make a name for itself. They had developed advanced weaponry, space travel technology, and a reputation for being fiercely determined. Their military had grown stronger, and their scientists had discovered breakthroughs in fields, like energy and biology, that were beginning to rival the oldest species in the galaxy. But none of this had prepared the council for the shock of this moment. The humans were pulling out, and there was nothing they could do about it. The council's leaders quickly assembled, calling for an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. It didn't take long for the room to fill with the usual chaos of alien voices, each one representing a different species with their own unique perspective. Some argued that this was a political stunt. Others believed it was a sign of weakness. But all agreed on one thing. This was a crisis. How could they do this? Cried Representative Zilkra, the head of the Soria, a species known for their advanced political maneuvering. The humans are nothing without us. They have no place outside of our protection. You underestimate them, Zilkra, replied Ryak, a tall, angular alien from the Valter species. Humans are not weak. They've been hiding something. I'm sure of it. They've been preparing for this moment for years. Ryaka was right. The humans had always been a mystery. They had kept to themselves, focusing on their own growth rather than seeking the approval of the council. Their ships, though not as advanced as the best of the galaxy's fleets, had become formidable in their own right. The council's representatives had never understood why humans refused to share their technologies or collaborate in the same way that the other species did. Should we send a fleet? Zilkra asked, his voice filled with concern. Ryak shook his head. We can't send a fleet, not yet. It would be seen as an act of aggression, and that would play right into the humans' hands. They are already preparing for war if it comes to that, but we don't know how far they are willing to go. Meanwhile, Ambassador Sarah Mitchell, back in her home government office, was staring at the holographic screens before her. She had expected the council to react with disbelief. They always did. For years, the humans had been the ones who always played by the council's rules, but no more. She had made sure that this decision would be final. How will they react? Sarah's aide, Lieutenant Gregg, asked from across the room. They'll panic. They always do when they're faced with the unknown, Sarah replied, her voice calm yet determined. But we've prepared for this. The Council's days of controlling us are over. Greg nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had been with Sarah throughout her diplomatic career and had seen firsthand how humans had been treated by the Council. They were often dismissed, ignored, or even outright manipulated. No matter what they accomplished, they were still treated like outsiders. We have to show them that we're not just another species they can ignore. We have something they don't understand, Sarah added, her eyes narrowing with focus. Humanity is stronger than they think. Back at the Council, leaders continued to argue, but the mood was shifting. Some factions pushed for a quick military response. They wanted to punish humanity for their bold move. Others, however, were more cautious. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet," said Zorvok, an alien diplomat from the Taurian race. "The humans have always surprised us. In this move, it feels different." The debate raged on for hours. One by one, representatives from across the galaxy voiced their opinions, but no one could agree on a course of action. Some were frightened of the unknown power that humanity might now hold. Others were angered by the disrespect shown by the humans. The Council's indecision was beginning to look like weakness. And that was a dangerous thing to show in the face of a species that had just proven it could take care of itself. Alien in the room knew that they had to act quickly, but they didn't know how. Humanity's sudden decision had thrown the galaxy into turmoil. As the meeting continued, the true scale of the situation began to sink in. The humans had made their choice, and the galaxy was now forced to deal with the consequences.
Now the once proud
Galactic Council, a body that had controlled the fates of countless species, was now faced with the question, what were they going to do about humanity? The galaxy was in chaos. The Galactic Council, which had once been a symbol of peace and cooperation, was now facing its greatest challenge. After the humans cut all diplomatic ties, the Council's members were left scrambling to understand the implications. Some species remained skeptical, thinking that humanity's decision was a temporary tantrum. But as the days passed, the truth became clearer. Humanity had prepared for this moment, and they weren't going to back down. Human fleet, once considered weak and outdated compared to the mighty armadas of the older species, had begun to show signs of a new power. The Council had always seen human ships as simple, utilitarian, and underwhelming, often relying on sheer numbers rather than superior technology. But now, that perception was starting to shift. In the heart of the human capital, the President sat with his top military advisors. They were watching the growing tension across the galaxy. The leaders of the other species were starting to feel the pressure, wondering what would come next. "I told you this was coming, President Jonathan," Wes said, his voice firm as he stood at the head of the table. He was a tall man, known for his calm demeanor, but his eyes held a certain fire. "The Council has been treating us as if we were their playthings. It's time to show them what we're really capable of." General Alina Hayes, one of the most experienced military commanders on Earth, nodded. "We've been working on the new ship designs. They're ready. We're just waiting for the signal." The humans had been quietly working on an ambitious project, a ship that would completely change the balance of power. It was a warship that combined human innovation with technology gleaned from various alliances, including stolen secrets from the Council's enemies. The ship was capable of turning the tide of any conflict, and it was now fully operational. But it wasn't just the ship that had changed. The entire human approach to warfare had evolved. "We need to make sure they understand," General Hayes continued. "We can't let them think this is a bluff. If we're going to do this, we do it all the way." The President's gaze hardened. "Prepare the fleet. We're not just defending our borders anymore. We're sending a message to the entire galaxy." Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council's headquarters, panic was starting to spread. Representatives from various species gathered again, their voices rising in fear and anger. The humans had cut ties, but it wasn't just a diplomatic rupture. There was something more behind their decision, something that the Council had yet to understand. "The humans are preparing for something, Ryek," the Volta representative said quietly. He had always been skeptical of humanity's potential, but now his tone had shifted, and "I'm afraid we won't be able to stop them." Zilkra, the Soria leader, slammed his fist on the table. "This is madness. They're nothing. How could they possibly think they can stand against the might of the council? But even as Zilkra spoke, a voice in the back of his mind whispered that something was wrong. Humanity had proven time and again that it could surprise everyone. The rumors about their new weapon, about their new ship, were growing louder. It wasn't just a rumor anymore. It was a reality. "We don't know what they've got," Zorvok, the Taurian diplomat, said cautiously, their fleet dot. "It's different. And they've got something in the works that could change everything." But still, the council refused to believe it. The older species were too proud, too comfortable in their power. They had seen humans rise through the ranks, but they had always dismissed them as an insignificant force in the grand scheme of things. They didn't see the potential in humanity. They only saw the inconvenience. In the weeks that followed, the tension grew. While the council debated its options, the humans remained quiet. They didn't respond to threats. They didn't engage in further negotiations. They simply waited, knowing that their time would come. Then, without warning, humanity made its first move. A single human ship, the USS Valor, a newly commissioned vessel, left Earth's orbit. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a large-scale operation. It was just one ship, but its presence was enough to send shockwaves through the galaxy. The USS Valor was not just any ship. It was a masterpiece of human engineering. It had been designed with one purpose in mind: to make the Galactic Council realize that humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. The USS Valor traveled quietly through space, avoiding all known routes. It didn't engage in any attacks. It didn't fire a single shot. But its presence was enough. The Council's sensors picked it up almost immediately. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was powerful, but not aggressive. It was a silent threat. "We need to respond," Zilkra said urgently, his voice shaking. "If we don't stop them now, we'll lose everything." "We don't know what they've got yet," Ryak replied. "The humans have always been unpredictable. Maybe we can negotiate, but we can't act without knowing what we're dealing with." But before they could form a plan, another message from Earth arrived. This time, it was simple. It wasn't a demand or a threat. It was just a message, short and clear. "The age of manipulation is over. We don't need your council anymore." The message was sent across the galaxy. It wasn't just to the council. It was a declaration to every species in the galaxy. The humans were done playing by the rules of others. They had no intention of being anyone's puppet anymore. This time, the council could no longer pretend that humanity was a small, insignificant species. The humans had declared their independence, and they had the power to back it up. The USS Valor, alone, made the council realize just how serious humanity was. In the days that followed, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human ships, small but numerous, were appearing in places where they had never been. Before, the humans weren't attacking, but they were positioning themselves strategically. They were making their move. The message was clear. They were prepared. They were no longer afraid. As the days turned into weeks, the council finally understood that this wasn't a passing storm. Humanity wasn't going to back down. They had shown their silent strength. And now the galaxy had no choice but to take notice. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They had become a force to be reckoned with. The days following the humans' bold declaration passed slowly, filled with uncertainty and fear. The Galactic Council was still trying to make sense of the humans' actions. Many species had dismissed the humans as impulsive, naive, and inexperienced. But now, it was clear that humanity was serious and ready to show the galaxy their true strength. Across the galaxy, rumors about the humans' new ship spread quickly. But it wasn't just their military might that had people worried. Humanity had always been a strange species, constantly surprising everyone with their ability to adapt and overcome. But what was really troubling the council was that the humans had never revealed their full potential before. In the council chambers, the debate continued. The representatives of the various species were divided. Some, like Zilkra, still believed that the humans were a threat to the existing order and that something needed to be done. Others, like Ryak, were beginning to question whether the council had truly understood the humans all along. There was a growing sense of unease in the room. as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the humans to make their next move. "We need to make contact with them," Zorvok said, his voice low but urgent. The Taurian diplomat had always been cautious, and now, more than ever, he could feel the tension in the air. "We need to understand what they want before things spiral out of control." "And what if they refuse to negotiate?" Zilkra asked, his tone sharp. "What if they've decided to declare war on the entire council?" Ryuk stood up, looking at the room of gathered representatives. "We don't know that. What we do know is that the humans have shown a level of restraint that is uncharacteristic. They could have attacked at any moment, but they haven't. This is different. They want something, but they're not telling us what." At that moment, the large holographic screen in the middle of the room flickered to life. A new transmission had arrived. It was from Earth, and it came with a warning. The humans would no longer participate in council affairs. They would not attend any more meetings or follow any more laws set by the council. Instead, they would create their own path, and they would decide what role they would play in the galaxy. "This is it," President Jonathan West said in his office, addressing his closest advisors. "We've made our decision, and there's no going back. The council is finished. We won't be their pawns any longer." Sarah Mitchell, the human ambassador, stood at his side, watching the hologram of the council's leaders with a mixture of calm and determination. She had always known this day would come, the day when humanity would no longer be content with simply playing. Along with the rules of the galaxy's elite, they had been underestimated for far too long. "The council has failed us," she said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "We've given them everything, our technology, our resources, our soldiers, but in return, they've only treated us as inferior. It's time to change that." General Alina Hayes, the leader of the human military, spoke next. "We've prepared everything for this moment. The new warships are ready. Our strategy is in place. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we're no longer controlled." "We won't attack unless we have to," President West said, looking at the advisors around him. "But we'll defend ourselves, and we'll make it clear that the humans are no longer a species to be dismissed." As the message was broadcast to the Galactic Council, there was a feeling of dread that hung over the meeting. For the first time, the council's leaders were beginning to realize the gravity of the situation. The humans were no longer just a small, insignificant species. They had become a major player. The galaxy was starting to take notice. The council's response was immediate. A delegation was formed to make contact with the humans, but there was no guarantee that the message would be received well. Representatives from every major species, except for humanity, gathered in a last-ditch effort to find a peaceful solution. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell was not present for the meeting. Instead, a simple message arrived from her, which was played on the council's screen. "The age of manipulation is over. Humanity will no longer serve your interests. We seek peace on our own terms. Do not test us." Her words hung heavy in the air, and the room fell silent. There was no way to misinterpret her message. The humans had made it clear that they would no longer be under anyone's thumb. "What do we do now?" Zilkra asked, his voice filled with anger and fear. Ryuk looked at him with a cold expression. "We do what we should have done a long time ago. We face the reality that humanity is no longer a subordinate species. We can either accept them as an equal or risk going to war." Zilkra's eyes narrowed. "They are not our equals. They are nothing more than a small, aggressive species. We cannot let them change the rules of the galaxy." But even as he said those words, there was doubt in his eyes. The humans had shown strength, patience, and power that no one had expected. The galaxy was on the brink of a new era, and the council could no longer pretend that humanity was just a passing phase. The next few days were filled with reports. The USS Valor, the flagship of the human fleet, had been seen in more locations, quietly making its way through space. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't even engaging in military operations. It was simply moving. But each time it passed by, it was a reminder that the humans were not going away. They had the power to defend themselves, and they were willing to do whatever it took to protect their interests. It was clear to the council that the humans had something they weren't sharing. The rumors about the new warship had only grown louder, and now the council was certain. Humanity had discovered something powerful, and they were holding it back, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. The members of the Galactic Council were starting to realize that their time of dominance might be coming to an end. And the humans were no longer the underdogs. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy had to adjust to that reality. As the days passed, the tension in the council's chambers only grew. The situation was becoming increasingly dire. The humans were making their move, and the galaxy had no choice but to watch. The tension in the Galactic Council grew to a breaking point as the days passed. Every corner of the galaxy was buzzing with news of the humans' sudden withdrawal from the council. The message was clear. Humanity had cut all diplomatic ties, and they were no longer interested in participating in the political games played by the older species. The humans had made their move. The galaxy had no choice but to react. The council had never faced a situation like this before. For centuries, they had controlled the fate of countless species, making decisions that shaped the galaxy. But now, a species that was once considered an outsider and underdog was challenging their authority. The humans were no longer content with being pawns. They were making their own rules, and the galaxy had no idea how to deal with it. In the council chambers, representatives from the various species argued fiercely. The room was filled with voices, some demanding a military response, others suggesting diplomacy. But all of them were confused. They didn't know what the humans wanted or how far they were willing to go. The uncertainty was eating away at the one sturdy foundation of the Galactic Council. The humans must be stopped before they get any further. Zilkra, the Soria representative, said, his voice filled with panic. He had never liked the humans and had always seen them as a threat. They have no business acting this way. If we don't act now, we will lose our influence over the galaxy. Raik, the Valter representative, shook his head. You're not thinking clearly. The humans have done nothing but assert their independence. We need to understand why they've made this move before we do anything rash. We can't afford to make a decision out of fear. But Zilkra wasn't the only one who was afraid. There was a growing sense of panic among the other representatives. The idea of humans breaking free from the Council's control had never occurred to anyone. Humanity's sudden rise had been so unexpected, so rapid, that the Council had failed. To prepare for it, a soft beep from a console broke the silence, and a new transmission appeared on the screen. It was from President Jonathan West, the leader of humanity. His face appeared calm but resolute, as usual. The message was short, but the words were enough to send another wave of anxiety through the Council. We are no longer bound by the Galactic Council, President West said. We will defend our borders, our people, and our way of life. If you want peace, we will meet you halfway. But if you continue to push us, we will not hesitate to act. The message was simple, but it was a warning. The humans had made it clear that they were not going to be manipulated any longer. They were prepared to fight if necessary, and the Council had no idea what to do about it. As the transmission ended, the room fell into chaos once again. The representatives argued back and forth, each suggesting different courses of action. Some wanted to send a fleet to intimidate the humans, while others urged diplomacy. But there was one thing that everyone could agree on. The situation was quickly becoming uncontrollable. We don't even know what they have, Zorvok, the Taurian diplomat, said, his voice trembling. They've been hiding something from us, and I fear that whatever it is, it's going to change everything. The idea of a new unknown weapon was on everyone's mind. Rumors about the human warship, the USS Valor, had been circulating for weeks. No one knew for sure what it could do, but everyone feared it. If the humans had developed a new weapon, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Council's leaders knew that they couldn't wait any longer. The humans were clearly preparing for something big. The tension between the two sides was palpable, and the possibility of war loomed over them all. But even as the Council scrambled to figure out its next move, the humans continued to stay quiet. They didn't make threats, didn't make demands. They simply waited as if the next step was already clear. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued to operate in silence. The USS Valor, now confirmed to be fully operational, was seen moving through human-controlled space. It didn't engage with anyone. It didn't attack. But its presence was enough. Every time it passed through a system, the news spread like wildfire. The Council's eyes were fixed on that ship. They couldn't afford to ignore it any longer. The humans had made one thing very clear. They were not afraid. They were ready for whatever came next. And the Council, for all its power and influence, was unsure how to respond. Back on Earth, President Jonathan West met with his closest advisors once again. General Elena Hayes, the leader of the military, stood by his side, her face hard with determination. Humans had been preparing for this moment for years, but even she could feel the weight of what was coming. "We've made our move," President West said, his voice steady. "Now we wait. The Council will try to figure out how to respond, but they're not ready for what we've become." General Hayes nodded. "We've done everything we can to prepare. The USS Valor is ready, and so are the others. If the Council decides to act, we'll be ready to defend ourselves. But we don't want war. We want to be left alone." "I know," President West replied, "but we can't keep pretending that we don't have the strength to fight back if necessary. We'll do what we have to do." As the human leaders prepared for whatever might come next, the rest of the galaxy continued to watch. The Council's indecision was becoming more and more apparent. Every day that passed, the humans grew stronger, more confident in their position. They had already shown that they were willing to fight for their independence. And the galaxy was starting to take notice. The Council had tried to maintain control, but now it was clear that humanity had changed the game. Be the underdogs. No longer would they be dismissed as a weak species. The age of humanity's submission to the Council was over, and whether the galaxy liked it or not, the humans were here to stay. As the representatives of the Galactic Council continued their debate, they knew one thing for certain. They could no longer ignore the humans. They had underestimated them for far too long, and now they had no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. The days passed in tense silence, each one heavy with anticipation. The Galactic Council was no closer to a decision on how to handle the humans. Their once secure position as the ultimate authority in the galaxy was beginning to erode. Species that had long stood at the top of the Council now found themselves looking over their shoulders. Aware that humanity's unexpected move had fundamentally shifted the balance of power, the USS Valor continued its silent journey through human-controlled space, sending a clear message that humanity had the means to defend itself and more. The Council's leaders, still unsure of what the humans had, were becoming increasingly uneasy. They had expected the humans to buckle under pressure, to seek a quick return to their old position as a subordinate species. Instead, they had chosen a path of independence and strength, one that the galaxy had never seen before. On Earth, President Jonathan West continued to monitor the situation closely. He was calm, but the weight of the moment was not lost on him. Humanity had made its choice, and there was no going back. The USS Valor was only the beginning. The human fleet, once a collection of outdated ships, had been upgraded with the latest technology, and their new warships were a testament to humanity's ingenuity. But despite their growing strength, President West knew that a confrontation with the Council was not inevitable. The goal was not war, it was peace on humanity's own terms. General Elena Hayes sat across from him in his office, her expression focused. They've had enough time to come to their senses. If they don't make a move soon, they risk losing any chance of peaceful resolution. The longer they wait, the harder it will be for them to back down. We've given them plenty of chances, President West replied. We've made it clear that we want peace, but we'll defend ourselves if they try to force us into submission. We're not going back to how things were before. The message was simple. Humanity was no longer a species that could be pushed around. The age of reliance on the Galactic Council had come to an end. Humanity was forging its own path, one that did not depend on the approval or guidance of those who had previously treated them as lesser. Meanwhile, in the council chambers, the mood had shifted from panic to confusion. Representatives from various species had gathered, trying to make sense of the growing crisis. The room was filled with voices, but none of them held the same authority they once had. The council's power was crumbling, and the question on everyone's mind was, what now? We cannot allow this to go unchallenged, Azilkra, the Soria representative said, his voice trembling with frustration. The humans are making a mockery of everything we've worked for. It must be stopped. Ryak, the vaulted diplomat, leaned forward in his seat, his tone more measured. We've underestimated them, Zilkra. They're not backing down. Whatever they've got, they've kept it hidden from us. But we can't just rush in without knowing what we're dealing with. If we do, we risk triggering a war that could shake the entire galaxy. Zilkra slammed his fist on the table. Can't just let them walk away. They need to be made to understand their place. Zorvok, the Taurian representative, spoke up quietly. But do we even know where they stand? Do we know what they're really capable of? We've heard the rumors, but rumors aren't facts. Until we have proof of what they can do, we must be cautious. For the first time, the representatives began to agree on something: fear. The humans had done something that none of them had anticipated, and now they were at the mercy of an unknown power. The Council had always prided itself on controlling the fate of the galaxy, but now it was clear that there was a species that would no longer play by their rules. The humans had shown the galaxy that they could no longer be ignored, and that realization was terrifying. The debate raged on for hours, but despite the fear, the indecision was taking its toll. Council was fractured, and its inability to respond effectively to humanity's challenge was only making matters worse. As the debate continued, a new transmission arrived, this time from the humans. The message appeared on the screen, simple and direct. We are not your enemy, but we will defend ourselves. The galaxy must learn to respect our sovereignty. You continue to push us, we will no longer offer peace. The message was clear. Humans were not threatening to attack, but they were making it clear that they would no longer be treated as a lesser species. The Council had no choice but to acknowledge that humanity had reached a turning point. They could no longer ignore the humans or dismiss them as insignificant. President West watched the reaction from Earth. His message had been received. Now it was time to see how the Council would respond. He had already prepared for this moment, and the next step was clear. Humanity would stand firm. If the Council wanted peace, they would have to meet humanity on equal terms. If they wanted war, they would get it. The USS Valor, along with the other human ships, continued to patrol human space. It wasn't an act of aggression, it was a statement. Humanity was no longer confined to the edges of the galaxy, playing by the rules set by others. They'd carved out their own place, and they were determined to defend it. As the human fleet continued its quiet patrol, Council was faced with a choice. It could try to reassert their power, sending fleets, and attempting to force humanity back into submission, or they could accept the reality that humanity was no longer their subordinate, and find a way to coexist as equals. The Council's response, however, was not one of immediate action. Instead, they called for a summit to determine how to handle the situation. Representatives from each species were summoned to a special meeting, one that would decide the future of the galaxy. Would the humans be forced to accept the Council's terms? Or would the Council finally recognize humanity as an equal? As the summit approached, the tension was palpable. Leaders from every corner of the galaxy were nervous about what would come next. The humans had shown that they were capable of standing up to the Council, and that changed everything. In the days leading up to the summit, President West and General Hayes continued to prepare. They knew that this meeting would be their chance to establish humanity's place in the galaxy. There would be no turning back. Whatever happened at the summit would shape the future of humanity's role in the galaxy. And for the first time, humanity would not be playing by anyone's rules, but their own. The galaxy had been forever changed by the actions of one species. The age of the Galactic Council's dominance was over, and a new order was beginning to take shape. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer just a small part of the galaxy. They had arrived as a force to be reckoned with.